Let me start with a genuine question, the kind you've probably never stopped to answer out loud. How many times have you bought the ticket, grabbed the popcorn, settled into that theater seat completely hyped to watch your favorite anime's movie, and walked out not quite knowing if it was worth it? That lukewarm, strange feeling. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't what had been hammering inside your head all week either. Hold on to that feeling, because it's the exact heart of what we're talking about today. Because the new That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime movie, the one called Tears of the Azure Sea, the Sokai no Namida Hen, arrived to answer a question that had been stuck in the fan base's throat for quite a while now. Can Rimuru still pack a movie theater and send everyone home smiling, or has the magic run out? And look, for you to understand why that question carries so much weight, we need to rewind just a little. Remember how massive TenSura used to be? It was the isekai of the moment. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was watching it. That insane rise of a little blue slime who becomes king of an entire nation. But then season 3 came along and the pace just stalled. It got slow, dragged out, too much politics, and not enough action for most people's taste. And the first movie, Scarlet Bond, back in 2022, was one of those classic, oh, it's decent enough cases. Not bad, not memorable, right down the middle. And when a massive anime starts stacking up decent enough reactions, the hype bleeds out. Slowly, but it bleeds. So pay close attention to this detail because it changes everything. The production didn't release this movie alone. They dropped it practically glued to season 4's premiere, almost at the same time. That's not a coincidence, that's a move. That's the entire franchise screaming, we're back, and this time we mean it. Rimuru stepped back into the ring, and this movie is the opening punch. And here's the first thing you need to know before deciding whether to spend your time on it. Tears of the Azure Sea is the second theatrical film in the franchise, directed by Yasuhito Kikuchi, with an original story written by Fusa himself, the original creator. And it occupies a very specific position in the timeline. It's a bridge between Season 3 and Season 4. It's not a loose standalone chapter thrown into the void, but it's also not the main story. It's that kind of parallel adventure, a side quest, just like the first movie had already done, except this time with an important thread tied to Season 4 to hook existing fans. Hold on to that piece of information, because it's going to be decisive right at the end. So let's get into what actually happens. No fluff. Picture the scene. Rimuru and the whole crew just wrapped up the opening ceremony of the Demon Kingdom Federation Tempest with a golden bow. It was a huge milestone for the nation. Heavy political work, stitching alliances together, that exhausting marathon of responsibility that drains anyone dry. And what does a king deserve after all that? A vacation, rest, a breath of fresh air. And that's where the invitation that kicks off the story comes in. El Messia, the celestial empress of the Elven nation, invites Rimuru and his companions to spend the few days on her private resort island. Beach, blue sea, sunshine, peace. Everything they needed. Except, obviously, if it were actually peaceful, there'd be no movie, right? Put yourself in their shoes for a second. You finally let your guard down, you relax for the first time in months, and the universe decides that's the exact moment to drop a massive problem right in your lap. And that problem has a name. Yuta, a mysterious woman who appears and completely shifts the tone of that vacation. She's the deuteragonist of the film, the second lead, and carries the central mystery of the plot. And the backdrop of all this is one of the coolest things the movie presents visually, an underwater nation called Kaien, hidden deep beneath the sea that venerates an aqua dragon as its guardian deity. There's a legendary artifact, a dragon's fang, a magic flute, and a villain named Zodin chasing power. The classic ingredients of a fantasy adventure, all laid out on the table. Now, I need to be straight with you about one of this movie's quirks, and it's a quirk TenSura absolutely loves to commit. The timeline is bewilderingly confusing. This movie takes place after Season 3, but before Rimuru receives that letter from the Council of the West that appeared at the very end of the season. And on top of that, it runs basically parallel to the beginning of Season 4, because there are scenes here that you also see in the new episodes, like Diablo announcing he's looking for subordinates. So, in other words, to fit this movie neatly inside your head, you need a map. It's the kind of thing a hardcore fan will love to untangle, while a casual viewer will simply ignore it and enjoy the adventure for what it is. And you know what? Both ways are completely fine.
Alright, but enough dancing around it. You clicked on this video because you genuinely want to know, is it worth it or not? So let's split the movie open and look what's inside. And I'll give you both sides because you deserve the full truth, not just the pretty parts. Let's start with what shines, because there's plenty of good here. The animation, the fights, the sakuga. Take a breath and write this down. The battle scenes in this movie are among the finest the entire franchise has ever delivered. The opening scene hits like a freight train, built around a jaw-dropping fight choreography centered on Hira. And throughout the film, you get both worlds, the grounded hand-to-hand combat, raw and physical, and those enormous, explosive magical attacks worthy of Rimuru's new status as a true demon lord. Visually, when this movie wants to impress, it impresses. Trust that. And there's a second highlight that for me is the real beating heart of this film. Gobta. Yeah, Gobta, that goofy little goblin who normally exists as comic relief. Here, he's the star. He's the one with the most genuine and beautiful growth arc in the entire story. His relationship with Hira is the thread that stitches the film's emotional core together, and it's genuinely endearing to watch. If you've always rooted for the side characters, the ones living in the shadow of the main cast, this movie is going to hand you a gift, because watching an underestimated character finally have their moment is one of the most satisfying feelings any story can deliver. And of course, there's the humor. That signature TenSura humor is still landing, carried by the strong personalities of the main cast we already love. The characters remain the franchise's greatest strength, and this movie doesn't lose that. But now I need to flip the coin because it'd be dishonest to sell you only the pretty side. And this part stings a little. The story. The story is the Achilles heel of this film. Underneath all that gorgeous animation, what you have is a generic script, predictable. Hira's journey, despite all the mystery built around her, follows the most well-worn archetype in the book, the tough, strong-willed heroine who is later revealed to be more than meets the eye. Does it work thematically? It does, but you can see every twist coming from a mile away. And the central relationship, as sweet as it is basically Beauty and the Beast repackaged with no real surprises. And there's one specific moment that critics pointed out without mercy. When the main villain finally reveals his true intentions, it borders on cringeworthy. The kind of revelation that was supposed to land as a gut punch and instead just makes you smile awkwardly. It's a Disney fairy tale, except without taking its own fantasy seriously enough to carry the emotional weight of an actual fairy tale. And it doesn't stop there. Remember TenSura's enormous cast? Well, a lot of great characters get benched. Benimaru, Hakuro, Soe, they barely exist in the film, let alone play meaningful roles. They throw a few hits during the action sequences and shuffle right back into the background. Maybe it was worthwhile trade to give Gobta the spotlight, but if any of those three are your favorites, brace yourself for disappointment. And even the visual effects have a stumble. Certain effects, explosions, tornadoes, natural phenomena, sometimes feel jarring against the rest of the animation style. They get this slightly artificial, plastic quality that breaks the immersion at certain points. Now, let me give you the context that puts all of this into perspective, because this is where the measuring stick appears. 2025 and the early months of 2026 have been absolutely brutal for anime cinema. We've had things that redefined what an anime film can be. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, which shattered technical boundaries. Chainsaw Man The Reze Arc, which moved people in ways that few stories managed to do. And it's impossible not to compare. You can even sense that the romantic conclusion of this TenSura film was trying to draw from that same Reze well. But the raw truth is that Tears of the Azure Sea doesn't play in that same league. It didn't come here to change your life. It didn't come to revolutionize animation. So here we are at the question that opened this video. Is it worth it? And the honest answer is it depends entirely on who you are when you sit down in that seat. Look, let me be straight with you, the way a friend would be. This is, without beating around the bush, a movie made for the fans, for people who love TenSura. If you followed the saga, if you have genuine affection for these characters, if you just want to spend nearly 2 hours enjoying a light, fun adventure with a crew you already feel close to, it's worth it. It's enjoyable. It captures the essence of what makes people love this franchise. You'll laugh, you'll get fired up during the fights, you'll root for Gobta, and you'll walk out satisfied.
But if you're the person who walked in expecting a masterpiece, a game changer, something you'll still be turning over in your mind weeks from now, I need to prepare you. You're going to walk out a little empty-handed. As the critics put it in a way that I found pretty perfect, this film doesn't quite feel like a vacation because it doesn't hand you any experience you'll remember for the rest of your life. It's more like calling in sick from work and lounging around without accomplishing anything important. A pleasant way to spend your time. And that's really it. The critical score reflects exactly that. A 6 out of 10. A solid film, a clear sign that good things are coming for Rimuru, but far from a revolution. General audiences were more forgiving, with warmer scores hovering around an 8. And that gap says a lot. It says that a fan's heart forgives what a critic's eye charges for. It says that sometimes being reunited with characters you love is worth more than a technically flawless script. Commercially, the film traveled the entire globe through Crunchyroll, opening in Japan at the end of February 2026 and rolling out to cinemas worldwide through April and May, pulling in several $1 million at the box office. It wasn't the thunderous phenomenon, but it played its part. And now I saved the most important detail for last, the one I asked you to hold on to all the way back at the beginning. If you decide to watch this, do not get up from your seat when the credits start rolling. I'll say it again, do not get up from your seat, because after the credits, there's a scene that drops a crucial hint about an important storyline yet to be revealed in Season 4, one you absolutely won't want to miss. It's the kind of thing that rewards the ones who stayed, and that connects this parallel film directly to the future of the main saga. For the devoted fans, it's that little reward that makes all the difference and transforms a secondary adventure into a piece of a much bigger puzzle. So, there it is. At the end of the day, Tears of the Azure Sea is a step forward from the first film. More ambitious, more beautiful to watch, more courageous in trying to appeal to a wider audience. But it remains at its core a gift for the fans, and not much more than that. A warm, familiar hug, not an earthquake. And I'll leave you with the question that just won't let go, the one I'd really love to hear you answer in the comments. When an anime we love hands us something that's merely good, are we being generous out of love, or are we, deep down, afraid of admitting that the magic isn't quite the same anymore?